You know, there's something about mysteries that pulls us in, like an itch in the back of your brain that just won't go away. And few mysteries have kept that itch alive longer than the Bermuda Triangle, even if you've never seen it on a map. And you haven't because it technically doesn't exist. You've definitely heard of it. Whispered between conspiracy theorists, blown up in pop culture, and immortalized in dozens of books, the Bermuda Triangle is one of those places that just sounds accursed. But here's a question: what if we've all been wrong? What if this sinister stretch of ocean isn't haunted by lost souls or ruled by a gateway to another dimension, but is, in fact, just a regular place? Let's start at the beginning. No, not the 1960s when it got its dramatic name, or even the early 1900s when ships started vanishing under mysterious circumstances. Let's go way, way back. Picture it. The year is 1492. Christopher Columbus is steering a wooden ship across the vast unknown Atlantic. No GPS, no radar, just stars, instincts, and a needle in a box we call a compass. One night, as the waves rocked his ship under a moonless sky, Columbus noticed something odd. His compass needle twitched. It didn't point north. It wavered. And then a strange light rose on the horizon like a flickering candle, then vanished. Now maybe that was just a trick of the eye, or a natural phenomenon he didn't understand. Or maybe it was the very first documented encounter with the Bermuda Triangle. Whatever it was, Columbus wasn't the last to feel something was off in those waters. Over centuries, stories piled up, some tragic, some just downright weird. But none captured the imagination quite like what happened to a ship called the Ellen Austin. In 1881, this vessel stumbled upon a drifting ship with no crew, just cargo, bobbing eerily in the waves. When a boarding team tried to sail it back, the two ships got separated in a sudden storm. When the ghost ship reappeared days later, the rescue crew had vanished. Again. A second team was sent. Same result. Gone. Poof. As if swallowed by the zeh. Of course, legends like this tend to grow taller with every retelling. And the historical record, let's just say it's a little fuzzy. But facts or not, the Bermuda Triangle began to build its reputation as the ocean's version of a black hole. Mysterious, cruel, and completely unforgiving. And then came 1918. The USS Cyclops, a Navy ship carrying over 300 men and thousands of tons of manganese ore, left port and simply disappeared. No SOS, no debris, no trace, just gone. President Woodrow Wilson famously said, "Only God and the sea know what happened." Over the next few decades, similar vanishings haunted this triangular patch of the North Atlantic. But it was Flight 19 that sealed the Triangle's place in mystery lore. 5 US Navy bombers took off for a routine training mission. Mid-flight, their leader reported malfunctioning instruments. "We are completely lost," was the last transmission. None of the planes returned. Even the rescue plane sent after them vanished. And once again, no wreckage was ever found. Now, at this point, you might be wondering, what is this place? Where is it exactly? Here's the strange part. It depends on who you ask. Some draw the triangle from Miami to Bermuda to Puerto Rico. Others expand or shrink the borders. No one really agrees. The only certainty is that within this shape-shifting space, weird things seem to happen. But here's what I find fascinating. With all these tragedies and tales swirling together, the Bermuda Triangle still isn't an official region on any map. The US Board on Geographic Names doesn't acknowledge it. There's no international standard for its boundaries. It's a place built on stories, on fear, on unanswered questions. Still, the name stuck. And by the mid-20th century, people started drawing lines, literally and figuratively, connecting each tragedy like a detective cracking a serial case. Then in 1964, writer Vincent Gaddis gave it the moniker we all know today in Argosy magazine. It wasn't long before books, TV specials, and late-night radio shows turned the Bermuda Triangle into a cultural phenomenon. By the 70s, Charles Berlitz's best-selling book had millions wondering if the lost city of Atlantis might lie beneath those cursed waves, pulling ships and planes into another realm. Sounds absurd, right? And yet, why were so many people disappearing without a trace? In part 2, we're going to dive deeper, literally into the science behind the legend. Is there actually something in the ocean playing tricks on compasses? Are methane bubbles and monster waves to blame? Or are we just victims of coincidence? Bad weather and a little too much imagination? Stick around, because the answers might surprise you more than the myths. So we've set the stage with tales of eerie disappearances, haunted waters, and a long history of what the hell happened here. But now it's time to shift gears. Let's go from ghost stories to cold, hard science. Because while folklore makes for great YouTube content, and let's be honest, it's way more fun to talk about aliens, it's the evidence that tells the real story, or at least tries to. The Bermuda Triangle, if you trace it roughly from Miami to Bermuda to Puerto Rico, covers about 500,000 to 1.5 million square miles of ocean. That's a pretty big margin of error, isn't it? That's like saying I lost my keys somewhere between my kitchen and Kazakhstan. The sheer vagueness of its boundaries is part of the problem. When you can move the borders to suit the story, you can fit just about any disappearance into the narrative. And yet something keeps pulling us back here. Maybe it's the magnetic weirdness. Maybe it's the weather. Maybe it's the human brain's obsession with making patterns out of chaos. Or maybe, just maybe, there's a kernel of truth buried in all this noise. Let's start with compasses. Ever since Columbus noted his compass acting up, theories have swirled that some kind of geomagnetic anomaly must exist in the triangle. The claim that it's one of the only places on Earth where compasses point to true north instead of magnetic north. That might not sound dramatic, but for navigation, even a small directional error at sea can mean missing your destination by hundreds of miles. But here's the twist. This phenomenon isn't exclusive to the Bermuda Triangle. In fact, it's not even current. The invisible line where compasses naturally align with true north is called the agonic line, and it's been shifting westward over time. At one point, yes, it passed through the Bermuda Triangle, but today it's over the Gulf of Mexico. So unless time-traveling ships are part of the mix, the compass explanation just doesn't hold water. Pun fully intended. That brings us to another suspect: methane. In 2016, scientists discovered enormous craters off Norway's coast, likely caused by explosive methane gas releases. Imagine giant underwater pockets of gas suddenly bursting through the ocean floor, sending ships skyward or dragging them under. Sounds terrifying. And naturally, the internet was quick to pin this on the Bermuda Triangle. But here's the science. While the methane theory is possible, it's not probable. There's no confirmed evidence of large methane blowouts in the Triangle's region, nor a single shipwreck that's been definitively linked to one. It's speculative at best. At worst, another excuse to blame invisible forces for very human problems. So what about rogue waves? Now we're talking reality. These aren't your run-of-the-mill swells. We're talking 80-foot unpredictable monster waves that seem to appear out of nowhere. They've been known to tear tankers in half. The first scientifically verified rogue wave, the Draupner wave, was recorded in 1995, and it blew the oceanographic community's mind. The Bermuda Triangle sits smack in the middle of one of the world's busiest storm corridors. Hurricanes sweep through here like clockwork. Add in rogue waves and you've got a recipe for disaster, especially before the days of satellite weather tracking and real-time navigation. A ship caught in the crossfire would have had little chance, and no way to call for help. And let's not forget the Gulf Stream. This fast-moving ocean current runs right along the edge of the Bermuda Triangle. It's like a river within the ocean, fast, strong, and extremely good at sweeping things away. Wreckage, oil slicks, life rafts, all gone in hours, which helps explain why so many disappearances leave behind absolutely nothing, not even a floating plank. This region is also notorious for rapidly changing weather. One moment it's calm. The next it's thunderclouds and squalls. For sailors and pilots alike, especially in earlier decades, this could be fatal. Visibility disappears. Instruments fail. And if you didn't know how to correct for wind drift or magnetic deviation, you could find yourself hopelessly off course. Now here's something that rarely gets mentioned: human error. It's not a fun explanation, but it's the one that shows up again and again. In the case of Flight 19, for instance, transcripts show the lead pilot was disoriented, misread his instruments, and flew further out to sea instead of back to land. What's more, this wasn't the first time he'd gotten lost mid-flight. Add in failing radios, bad weather, and fuel running out, and you've got a tragedy that didn't need any help from aliens. Which brings us to the big question: is the Bermuda Triangle even unusually dangerous? Surprisingly, no. According to data from Lloyd's of London and the US Coast Guard, the percentage of maritime and aviation incidents in the Triangle is exactly what you'd expect from any heavily traveled region. In fact, statistically speaking, it's safer than many areas of the Pacific and even parts of the Mediterranean. From 1982 to 2015, only 361 out of over 150,000 marine incidents occurred within the Triangle. That's less than 4%. And guess what? Not a single one of those was classified as a disappearance. YouTube journalist Johnny Harris took it a step further with 2021 shipping data. Of over 8,000 ships that passed through the Triangle that year, only 2 experienced any kind of casualty. That's 0.02%. Compared to the global average of 1.8%, the Bermuda Triangle might just be the ocean's safest boogeyman. So why does the myth persist? Because it's thrilling. Because humans are storytellers. Because it's more exciting to imagine lost civilizations and alien abductions than to admit a storm capsized a boat. We crave answers, and when the truth is too boring, we invent a better story. But in part 3, we're going to peel back the curtain even further. We'll trace the cultural explosion of the Triangle myth, from Cold War paranoia to best-selling books, and see how pop culture helped turn a navigational quirk into a worldwide obsession. Plus, we'll explore the real data that's been hiding in plain sight all along. Stick around. The truth may not be supernatural, but it's still unbelievably human. The thing about myths is that they don't need facts. They just need timing and a little drama. By the time we hit the mid-20th century, the Bermuda Triangle was already the subject of whispers, disappearances, unsettling silence, planes and ships just gone. But in 1964, a single article took those whispers and turned them into a worldwide roar. Vincent Gaddis, an author with a knack for the mysterious, published an article in Argosy magazine. He drew 3 simple lines on a map: Florida to Bermuda, Bermuda to Puerto Rico and back again, and branded this triangle of water as deadly. From there, the story took on a life of its own. What had been isolated tragedies were now part of a pattern. Suddenly, it wasn't 5 lost planes or a single vanished ship. It was a grand conspiracy of the sea, and the public ate it up. Why? Well, consider the context. The Cold War was raging. Nuclear anxiety was sky high. The Cuban Missile Crisis had just wrapped up. Mistrust of governments, media, and scientific institutions was growing. And here came a mystery that no one could explain, a riddle in plain sight hiding in our backyard. It was the perfect storm of fear, imagination, and confirmation bias. Enter Charles Berlitz. If Gaddis opened the door, Berlitz kicked it off its hinges. His 1974 bestseller, The Bermuda Triangle, didn't just rehash the stories, he went full throttle into fantasy. Atlantis, absolutely. Time portals, why not? Alien abductions, naturally. Berlitz's book sold over 20 million copies in 30 languages. Think about that. This wasn't a niche conspiracy. It was global, and it didn't stop there. TV specials, documentaries, late-night AM radio shows, all dedicated to the enigma of the Triangle. Even Hollywood couldn't resist. Steven Spielberg featured the missing Flight 19 crew as alien abductees in Close Encounters of the Third Kind. Because in an era desperate for the extraordinary, the Bermuda Triangle offered something tantalizing, a mystery that even science couldn't solve, or at least hadn't solved yet. But let's pump the brakes for a moment. As more scientific tools became available, researchers began to scrutinize the claims. Not just the wild ones, but the basic statistics. And guess what? Most of the incidents that had been blamed on the Triangle didn't even happen inside the so-called Triangle. Many took place outside its borders. Some never happened at all. They were exaggerated, misreported, or entirely fabricated. In fact, one of the most famous Triangle legends, the ghost ship, Ellen Austin, has no contemporary records backing up the story. It's not in shipping logs, no official reports. It may have been nothing more than nautical gossip. And even the confirmed incidents? They usually had explanations. Mechanical failure, poor weather, inexperienced crews, navigational errors. But those details rarely made the headlines. After all, what's more captivating? Ship lost due to storm, or vessel swallowed. By underwater alien portal. Yeah, exactly. Let's also not forget that oceans, by their very nature, are unforgiving. Ships sink, planes crash, and when they do, especially in remote areas, wreckage often disappears. The sea doesn't leave crime scenes, it cleans them. But here's where the myth really cemented itself, not in the data, but in the gaps between data. For every incident that was explained, there was another that wasn't. And where there's an information vacuum, stories rush in to fill it. It's like a form of collective escapism. We want there to be something unexplainable out there, something just beyond the reach of our instruments and intellect. Even today, when we have satellite tracking, sonar, black box technology, and a GPS in every pocket, people still reference the Bermuda Triangle with a knowing nod, as if there's something we're not being told. That maybe, just maybe, it's real after all. But here's the real twist. When we finally started collecting long-term data and analyzing it properly, the numbers were conclusive. The Bermuda Triangle simply doesn't stand out. From 1982 to 2015, over 150,000 marine incidents were documented globally. Just 361 of them occurred in the triangle. That's less than 4%. And not a single one was classified as a true disappearance. In aviation, the story is just as unremarkable. The National Transportation Safety Board's accident database shows no abnormal trend in the region. Most incidents involve takeoff or landing, usually in the Bahamas, where short runways and poor weather can lead to catastrophe. And when aircraft were lost mid-flight, it was typically due to poor judgment or severe conditions, not supernatural forces. One of the only recent incidents? JetBlue Flight N913JB in 2016 hit turbulence over Bermuda. One person was injured. Hardly an X-file. At this point, you might be thinking, okay, so we've debunked it. Game over. But hold on, there's still one final piece left to this puzzle, because even though science has poked 1,000 holes in the mystery, people still believe. Why? Because mystery is magnetic. It sells. It comforts. It gives us something bigger than ourselves to wonder about. And if we're honest, in a world where everything is mapped, tracked, and streamed live, we like not having all the answers. In Part 4, we'll tie it all together. We'll look at why the Bermuda Triangle myth still matters, what it says about us, and what we can learn from the truth behind the mystery. So don't go anywhere. The final chapter might not feature time portals, but it will give you something deeper to think about. Here's the thing. If the Bermuda Triangle was ever truly dangerous, the data would show it. If it swallowed ships and planes more often than anywhere else, insurance companies would charge more to pass through it. Rescue missions would be more frequent. Pilots would detour around it. But none of that happens. Statistically, it's just another stretch of ocean. And that's not to say tragedies haven't occurred there. They have. Real people have been lost. Families left without answers. But when we look closer, we see what most of these incidents have in common. Bad weather, human error, and unfortunate timing. Not mysterious forces, not alien abductions. Just the harsh, unpredictable nature of life at sea and in the sky. In fact, when Johnny Harris analyzed global shipping data from Lloyd's List in 2021, he found something astonishing. Of the 8,634 ships that passed through the Bermuda Triangle that year, only 2 experienced a casualty. That's 0.02%. By comparison, the global average for shipping incidents is 1.8%. That means the Bermuda Triangle is roughly 90 times safer than the worldwide average. So where does that leave us? Honestly, it leaves us with something more profound than aliens or time rifts. It leaves us with a mirror, because the story of the Bermuda Triangle isn't really about the ocean. It's about us. It's about the way we interpret chaos, the way we seek control in a world that often offers none. When faced with tragedy, especially the kind that leaves no evidence, our brains go searching for patterns, for meaning, for anything to help us sleep at night, And that's not weakness. That's being human. Myths like the Bermuda Triangle offer something rare, a pocket of uncertainty in an age obsessed with certainty. In a world where your phone knows where you are to the inch and your fridge tells you when you're out of eggs, there's something romantic about a place that refuses to be explained. It's a modern myth that grew not from facts, but from fear, and from our enduring hope that the universe still has a few secrets left to whisper. Even as science pushes the mystery aside, we keep the legend alive in books, movies, and conversations, not because we believe it's real, but because we want it to be. But here's what's truly extraordinary. The very idea of the Bermuda Triangle, this massive myth built on a shifting sea of stories, reminds us how easily a narrative can take hold when it fills a gap. All it took was one article, a few imaginative authors, and a public hungry for mystery. And suddenly we weren't just watching history, we were writing mythology in real time. Now some might feel let down by the facts. After all, nothing's going on here doesn't make for great headlines. But I'd argue the opposite. I think there's something deeply reassuring about the truth, that we can investigate the unknown, that we have the tools to separate reality from rumor, and that maybe, just maybe, not every mystery needs to stay mysterious forever. But let's not be too quick to roll our eyes at those who still believe, because belief, whether in sea monsters or in science, isn't about being gullible. It's about searching, reaching, trying to make sense of the world around us even when it doesn't make sense back. So the next time someone brings up the Bermuda Triangle at a party, or maybe even forwards you some TikTok about ghost ships and alien portals, you'll know the truth. You'll know the history, the facts, and the real science behind the story. But maybe, just maybe, you'll smile and say, yeah, but what if? Because we all need a little mystery now and then. And that, in the end, is the lesson of the Bermuda Triangle. Not that it's a cursed region, but that humans are incredible at storytelling, and sometimes our stories become more real than the truth. So whether you're sailing the Caribbean or just navigating the weird waters of life, remember, not every mystery needs solving. Some just need understanding. Thanks for coming on this journey with me. I'll see you next time right here on Earth, or just maybe somewhere a little stranger.